And welcome back, everyone, to the Bitcoin Business Bureau. As always, I'm your host, Litecoin Leader. Today's episode's going to be a little bit different. I wanted to share an interview that I recently did this week with Dylan Bradley, who's also a founder and member of the Bitcoin Band Founders Group. I met him back in Texas back in April. We talked a little bit. We've been talking since, and he had a really good discussion with me this week. He led the discussion, had some great questions. We had some great topics, good dialogue back and forth. I think it's a valuable thing to share with the rest of the community. So we're sharing it on both of our YouTube channels, on Instagram, and we're hoping that everyone else shares it with as many people as possible, because this is all about furthering the community and educating everybody, helping the adoption that's rapidly coming towards all of us. Clearly, obviously, we're going to benefit if you guys share it to our channels as we help to grow it. But the point of this is not really about eyeballs and YouTube and views. It's about expanding our community, expanding our reach, and informing people about what is really coming, and so they're prepared. And the cryptocurrency is coming whether people like it or not. So the sooner they learn about it and learn about the adoption, the more prepared they're going to be. So with that in mind, here's everything from Dylan Bradley and myself, and we're going to include the links below of both our channels and Instagram and all that good stuff to share. But I hope you enjoy the interview, and I'll talk to you briefly afterwards.
All right. So it's being recorded. All right. Welcome. Today I got Jeff, also known as the Litecoin Leader. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you on. And you got the name Litecoin Leader. Let's start with that. Like, where did that come from? What made you that?
It wasn't my first name, but Bitcoin Ben, I used it on Bitcoin Ben's show, and he had some trouble with my first name pronouncing it, but I was like, let's go with something that, he goes Bitcoin Ben. Let me pick something that's, get the double letter kind of right, the alliterative thing. And my first coin that I ever bought back in 2016 was Litecoin. So I said, Litecoin Leader. I'm kind of like, I like leading people. I like, people look at me as a leader. So Litecoin Leader had a nice ring to it. It was easy to pronounce. So that's the way I went.
Yeah. And you mentioned it was your first coin. You said 2016. So was that, like, I like to hear people's origin stories when it comes to crypto. Was that like when you first heard about it, or had you heard about it before? So tell me more about like how you got in and why you jumped into crypto, because in 2016, it was still a lot further out there than it is now in 2021.
It was. And I was involved in a number of guys I know that they've either done like, the poker thing, or they've done fantasy football or whatever. But I had some friends that, like, one friend of a friend, he'd done Bitcoin. And he traveled through Asia and said, like, he spent for his whole trip, everything was paid for with Bitcoin. Like, okay, now I'm interested. Yeah. So like I started to delve into it more, and I learned about it. I used to do real estate, so I was always interested in the entrepreneur side. And I was never a big fan of the current financial system, but as I dug into it further, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. And I dug into it, and I got into Coinbase. And they had Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. And I dug into all three, and Litecoin really intrigued me a lot. So that was the first coin I really bought. So that was the coin that really resonated with me. It seemed like Bitcoin, but cheaper, but also more lightweight, and it seemed like the next generation thing. So that's the first coin I ever bought, probably like $20 or so back then. Yeah. And I've been hooked ever since.
What was the price of Litecoin back then?
It was in the teens to 20s. It was right in there. And I do remember it was about 50 Litecoin or so equaled about a Bitcoin. So it was before Bitcoin, right around when Bitcoin was starting to age into like $1,000 a coin. But Litecoin is about $20.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, that's one thing that everyone in the industry keeps saying is just like, you can look at the prices today, but just look at them and just wait. Like, because if you look back in the past, things have exploded, which is wild. And you mentioned that you were drawn into the technology. I know this argument's been going around in the industry a lot about, which coin has more advanced technology, and is Bitcoin's technology outdated, or, can you speak more to the technology argument about, does it matter? Is it important, or where is it important?
Well, I mean, Bitcoin's the oldest one. It's 12 years old. Litecoin turns 10 in October. Yeah. So there's something to be said about something that's tried and true. Litecoin's never been hacked. Bitcoin's never been hacked. Litecoin's never gone down. Bitcoin went down once or twice in its first year, but they're both very strong coins. They're both proof of work. That was what it's the original, like it's like Gen 1 of the blockchain coins.
Yeah.
Now you're into proof of stake, the different ways of developing the coin with masternodes and such. But the technology, it's more about the use case than it is about the technology, because you have Bitcoin as a store of value, whereas Litecoin is more of a means of exchange, kind of like the digital gold of Bitcoin versus the digital silver of
Gotcha.
Litecoin. So there's 9,000 coins plus now. So
Yeah.
they all have hopefully a good use case. And if you can describe your coin in like an elevator pitch and just say, what is this coin about? And you can explain it in 15 seconds or less. That's a pretty good argument that your coin, and also it has a good use case for people to understand that coin that serves a good purpose.
Yeah. And I guess from my perspective, being a lot newer to the industry than you are, there, like you said, there's almost 10,000 coins, and I feel like there's a lot of them that do the same thing, and a lot of them, are basically the same thing with slight tweaks in their marketing message and maybe functionality. But there's a lot of areas where it's still like new technology, right? It has potential, but it hasn't penetrated the market yet. So like, I guess, how would you break that down? How would you describe altcoins to someone who's trying to learn more about them, and versus like Bitcoin? Because like Bitcoin, you said it's the digital gold, and Litecoin has tried to, brand itself as the digital silver, right? So all these other coins, like, what do we do with them? How do you approach it?
Well, it really comes down to there's a lot of different ways to evaluate altcoins. And altcoin, the general term of altcoin means any coin that's not Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is it's like the Kleenex, like the brand name. It's the number one. It's the leader in the clubhouse. It was the first one there. Everybody knows they kind of associate Bitcoin with blockchain and crypto, but there's little subtleties between each one. So Ethereum was the first big guy, and that's the number 2 coin, and that does smart contracts. So they have, that's their claim to fame. Litecoin it's the same as Bitcoin, but it's faster and cheaper to transact. That's easier. Like you wouldn't buy your lunch with Bitcoin, but you'd buy it with Litecoin. So if you can explain how you'd use each one, it starts to make sense. But you're right, there are some coins that it's kind of a branding and a marketing thing, like Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin kind of compete with one another because they're both really means of exchanges. But one of them, some people like one versus the other, but there's plenty of room in the space for both.
Gotcha. And so like, I guess when I'm trying to think about Litecoin, so how do you, I know there's a lot of talk about calling crypto, cryptocurrencies, crypto assets. And, from my perspective, especially, here in America, if anyone's, watching this, that's not in America, tax laws might be different, but here, there's the whole concept of capital gains tax when you sell any sort of crypto at this point in time. So how does that, in your opinion, affect spending, use cases? What's like the future you see on how that gets regulated? So like someone could buy something with Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or even Bitcoin or another coin.
Well, the tax laws are a little gray because it's such a young industry.
Yeah.
They've attempted to do it, but and as everybody talks about, we go with the not financial advice, not tax advice. But whenever we advise people, what we know. What we do know is that for the most part, it's considered somewhere between property and capital gains, so sort of like a stock. So the current laws are like if you transact more than $600, you have to report it. But if it's less than $600, you don't have to worry so much. So if you're buying lunch with Litecoin, it's not a taxable event because odds are, unless it's really, really nice lunch, it shouldn't be an issue.
So any transaction under $600 for any cryptocurrency or crypto asset at this point in time isn't taxable. So if for example, if I bought Litecoin today and it doubled in value, but then I go and use, I want to use it to buy something, but it's less than $600, I'm free and clear in general?
In my understanding, yes. That's my understanding, yes. So, but a lot of the ways the things are being attributed right now and looked at because of the DeFi, the decentralized finance aspect, which is going to be the number one growth area for cryptocurrency. And that really dawned in the last couple of years of like, we're really attacking the financial aspect of the entire industry, all the finance that's going out there. And this is where Michael Saylor and a few others are saying like, they're never going to sell their Bitcoin, but people have to realize that Bitcoin and other cryptos are assets. They're not necessarily cryptocurrency. So for example, if you own a house and you want to get more money, you borrow against your house.
Yeah.
But if you own Bitcoin, let's say you have one Bitcoin, it's $50,000 roughly.
Yeah.
If rather than selling it and creating a taxable event, there are plenty of ways now because of DeFi. You can borrow against the Bitcoin and use that borrowed lending, which is not a taxable event. You can borrow against a house, borrow against an asset like cryptocurrency.
Okay.
That's not taxable, but you can now you have your liquidity is back. You have $10,000 to $20,000 against that $50,000 asset that you borrowed against, and you can use that to spend, buy whatever you want against that. So that's where Michael Saylor says if he's got thousands of Bitcoins, he can borrow a lot of money against it and never have to sell his Bitcoin.
And how would you go about paying that back when that bill comes due if you're borrowing against that? Because I've heard of asset-based lending and never sell your Bitcoin. Like the whole thing behind buying a Tesla with Bitcoin is kind of stupid because it's a depreciating asset. Well, maybe not now. I think I've heard that cars have been going up in value, but in general, it's a depreciating asset, and you're selling an appreciating asset. So, could you explain like how you would then pay that bill off? Because that's the
sure. So let's say you borrowed. Let's speak of Tesla. Let's say we had I had 2 Bitcoin, and that's worth say 100,000. I borrowed 50,000 against it, and I'm going to buy a Tesla. So my payment might be for the lease $1,500 a month. Well, I have $50,000 that I borrowed against my Bitcoin. I put that in the bank. Now I have $1,500 that I can a month of a payment due. I can pay that out of the $50,000 that's now in my bank or however I keep that, or maybe it's a stable coin. But I pay that bill out of the money I borrowed against the asset that I have. Yeah. And then later on, if Bitcoin appreciates again, I borrow again from, let's say Bitcoin goes up to $100,000. Now I borrow $100,000 because I had 2 of them instead of 50. And now I pay off that original loan, and now I have more capital to work with. So you become more and more liquid as your assets appreciate, like Bitcoin. And as we view, there's never been a stretch of 4 years where Bitcoin is not going up. So whenever you get that peak, you just borrow against it, and now you're liquid again. You can pay off those monthly bills.
I mean, that when I first heard that, and it's good hearing you explain it. But when I first heard about that, I was like, why haven't I heard about this sooner? Like that sounds like that concept is just like brilliant. So you can invest in assets that are going up in value, so they keep growing over time, even if you just start with a little bit. And then in the future, you don't have to worry about selling those assets because they're still going up in value, and you could just get tax-free money from that and just rinse and repeat that process if done the right way, right? You have to
correct. I mean, this goes back to like the whole Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki, written 20, 30 years ago, before Bitcoin even existed, where he focused on real estate or cash flow. He would buy cash flows. He'd buy businesses that gave you revenue each month, and then you use that revenue to pay yourself that, rather than you buy an appreciating asset. So you had income coming in. So now you buying an asset now like Bitcoin or Litecoin or other coins that are appreciating over time, and you borrow against that asset. You never get rid of the asset. It's sort of like if you have a trust fund or a nest egg, you never touch the principal, but you use the interest to live off of. It's that concept.
Gotcha. I mean, I think that's a mind-blowing concept that we could do a whole conversation on playing that out and showing that, because I think for a lot of people, the power in this industry is stuff like that, right? It makes, when you hear that, and it makes you rethink about how you've been going about your personal finance and how you're going about your investments. And you're like, wow, I can plan around the growth of this like revolutionary industry and build wealth, for generations that come. And I think that's pretty powerful. I know some of my clients have mentioned that that's what really got them really interested in this, that generational wealth aspect of this.
That's exactly it. And that's why a lot of people, they diversify. They have cryptocurrency, they have precious metals, they have some foreign currency. We don't know what the world is going to bring us, but we just hedge our bets accordingly. What we do know is that over the last 10 plus years, Bitcoin is always going up over every 4 years. And we have a periodicity to it because there's a halvening where they cut the supply every 4 years, which kind of, the plan B stock to flow model that shows that the price goes up significantly every 4 years.
Which is, it's almost becoming an event, right? Hopefully it still plays out like that, because, if we can only imagine where we're going to be in 4 years after this crazy year so far. Now, you mentioned diversifying your portfolio, and I've heard a few different, depending on which coins people value more. But I've heard, like a 50-25 strategy, like 50% Bitcoin, 25% Ethereum, 25% altcoins. But then I've also heard, people flip that and do like, no Bitcoin, like 75% Ethereum, 25% altcoins. And I guess maybe you can speak that more, why someone would have the distribution like that, why altcoins get so little, because I know you have something you're working on called AltcoinOpoly. So I want to hear more about that. So maybe we can lead into that from there. But why the little distribution in altcoins? Why more in Bitcoin and Ethereum? And why are those at the top?
Well, the granddaddy of them all is Bitcoin, and that's what everybody when you talk about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is the leader in the clubhouse. When everybody invests, they typically go to Bitcoin because everything's paired against Bitcoin. That's been the way for the longest time. But your level of comfort of working with altcoins really depends on your knowledge of the other altcoins and what they do, and your comfort level, and also how you feel where we are in the market. Because there's like 4 levels. There's 4 seasons. There's Bitcoin season, and then there's Ethereum season, and then there's the top 20 or so, and there's altcoin season, which is like everything goes up. Okay. So that's sort of where we're at, and that's so I always look at it and say, if I'm going to pick between Bitcoin or Litecoin or another coin, like which coin is most likely to double sooner, and that's the coin I lean towards being invested in. I like to diversify I'm in several coins. I'm usually in 20 to 30 coins at any given time.
That's a lot of coins.
So it is a lot of coins. There's a lot to stay up on, but that's my bread and butter. I live and breathe altcoins. People come to me often for altcoins, and that's why I invented AltcoinOpoly, where I created a board. I'm giving out different coins to fill out the board between now and the end of July on my website, LitecoinLeader.com. So you can play along with me. And it's my rapid way of expanding people's knowledge base about here's 30-ish coins that I like, and here's why, and the reason I like them. For example, I'll pick out coins. I like a lot of coins I call platforms, like Cardano or Atom or Zilliqa, or I mentioned Cardano. So coins that you can build on, like Ethereum is the classic one, because you have Ethereum with like lots of ERC20 and all the different coins. They have their own blockchain, but other coins can start that way rather than building their own blockchain. They start on a platform, and then maybe they build another platform on themselves, like the Theta would. That's how they started. So by having a platform in your portfolio or several of them, like Ethereum has like hundreds of coins on its blockchain. Yeah. So rather than trying to pick out which coin is going to be the one that blows everybody's doors off, you just invest in Ethereum, and you get exposure to all the coins at once. So that way you get, you're kind of hedging your bets, kind of like buying a mutual fund. Okay. You have several hundred coins all at once.
Interesting. Okay. So you can focus in on platform. I mean, I guess you could really break down your exposure, strategy, or your investment strategy, non-investment advice, but by like how much about the coins and how much risk you're willing to take. Because it seems like as you go further down the altcoin rabbit hole, because you're getting more and more coins, because you mentioned, 4 or 5 platforms right there, and each of them probably have 10 to 20 or more coins on those platforms. So you really got to be careful. And then some of those coins probably are just trash, and then other ones are probably really good. So you'd have to spend more time or have more knowledge to really find those diamonds in the rough as you get further away from
and as you get into like coins and their platforms like Polkadot or Atom, I know off the top of my head, Atom has over 200 coins on its platform. So rather than me picking out which coin on the Atom platform is going to be good, I'll just invest in Atom. I get exposure to 200 coins for the price of one coin, and that way I'm self-diversifying by owning Atom. I have exposure to 200 coins for owning one. And if I do that with Atom, Zill, Polkadot, Ethereum, I do that with 6 or 7 coins that are all platforms. I have exposure to 1,000 coins by owning 5 or 6.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So that'd be a good like beginner tip for you if you're listening, and how you can go pick out. Because I've had people ask me like, I've heard about cryptocurrency, I've heard about Bitcoin, Ethereum, but what about the other ones? How do I know what's a good coin? And like what you mentioned there is find the platforms, and then you can get exposure there. And then if you want to go even further, then you can find the individual projects on the platform. Like one you mentioned in one of your Instagram stories or put your post was Polygon. Mm-hmm. And so, and you talked about it before, like this was before Polygon was, this was before the big, the big dip that we had, but it was also before Polygon went up a lot. Can you talk about Polygon for a minute, or what you saw there?
So the reason I dug into that coin like that, I learned about Ethereum, and Ethereum has had a checkered past. It's gone up and down. They are the number one platform. They have smart contracts, and a lot of coins start out on Ethereum. But when there's a lot of, I call it a super highway.
Okay.
But it gets traffic jams. So when you get a lot of coins on there, it gets jammed up. So all the coins on DeFi are basically on Ethereum. All the coins that were back in 2017 that were doing ICOs started out on Ethereum. And when there gets to be a jam, the fees go up because it can only support so many coins, so many transactions per minute.
Okay.
So I started to look for coins that created what they call a layer 2, a second layer on top of Ethereum, that helped with the traffic. And that's how I found a project like Matic and Loopring. Those two coins were very strong to me because they were working to solve a real world problem. And Matic had a ton of partnerships, and they were doing such good things. And I jumped in there. I think I jumped in back in December, and it was like 3 or 4 cents. But this is where it made sense. Like this, they're solving a real world problem, and I could explain to people like, Ethereum's clogged up. Matic helps to smooth that out and lower the transaction fees. So and once I explain what Matic does, they're like, oh, that makes sense. And everybody understands it, and they started to invest in it. And now it's gone from 4 cents to over $1.
Yeah, it went up to over like $2.40, which is wild. Because I didn't know, I didn't know what you knew, and I saw Matic when it first came on Coinbase, and it was like around 30 cents or so, right? And so I was like, oh, this looks cool. Like I heard the name Matic before, and I feel like this is what a lot of people they like. I heard about it, I'll put some money in there, and then lucky it went up. But there's enough times where you do that and it doesn't go up, and all that. So you were looking for, I guess you hit on something that I think is important, is looking for because like you said, Ethereum has a checkered past and it has problems, or it has had problems. And with these new ecosystems, these new platforms, there are problems that need to be solved, and there are coins that come up to solve those problems. So if you can see what those problems are before they hit mainstream, or before they're solved, that's an opportunity to invest in something, or to find a diamond in the rough.
Correct. If you find an answer before most people get there, you often reap some benefits. So if you find a coin before it's on Coinbase, but it's heading towards Coinbase, that's how I found a project called Reserve Rights Coin, which is still not on Coinbase yet. But I know that they added it to Binance. I found that about a year ago.
Okay.
And that's a stablecoin project. But I learned that both Binance and Coinbase invested in it. That tells me eventually it's going to be on both.
Yeah.
So they added it. I invested in it about a year ago. Binance added it, I think, last fall. Coinbase is still not there yet, but there's a Coinbase effect. Once a coin gets on Coinbase, it makes it much easier for people in the United States to buy it, which makes the price go up. That's sort of like what everybody's waiting for a project like Theta, which is a top 20 coin, but it's still, I get asked every day, how do I get Theta? And sometimes when coins are harder to get, they represent a better value, because as soon as something is easy to get, the price goes up.
Yeah, because then more people can just tap with their thumb and get it, which is good and bad. As I think we've seen, is that people that are not as educated, that are just kind of in it for the fun, can easily buy, but they can just easily sell as soon as some bad news comes, or they get or they want to take that money out to buy sneakers or whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah. The easier it is, the easier it is for people to get in and out. But if it's a little bit, if there's a little bit of a challenge, that can often be a little bit of a value to you.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. More barriers to entry, only the people that really know are willing to jump through those hoops will actually get it. So is there a strategy for companies like, for a company like Theta, or for them to delay getting on Coinbase or getting on Binance? Is there a reason why they do that? Is it like a business choice? Is it because they're not there yet? Is it?
Well, in a particular case of Theta, I think they focused on building the rapport in their networks and their validators, because they're associated with Samsung and Google. So they're working on their infrastructure and then building out their mainnet. They're about to launch their 3rd generation network just now, but they haven't really worried about market penetration. I think they know it's going to come, and the people that learn about the project, it will get there. With it being a top 20 coin, that's the thing, is you can look at either a Coinbase or a coin market cap, or a CoinGecko, and look at the top 100 coins, and you can live and breathe there and not have to worry about going out of the top 100. even if there's 9,000 coins, you don't need to leave the top 100 really to find good values, because there's the 100 projects, there's good stuff there. But as soon as you go past the top 100, now you're starting to get into the weeds, and maybe you need to educate yourself a little bit more. That's how you find your Matics or your RSRs. But those are usually found in like the top 300. You don't have to go too far deep into the weeds. Maybe a Divi. We've talked. I know that Divi's talk comes up a lot. I think it's in the top 500. But you don't need to go too deep just yet. I mean, the further down the chart you go, the harder it is to find a good product, because it's really in its infancy, and you just need to really understand what you're doing, and because it's really hard to get some of these coins. But for the most part, I mean, you just stick to the top 100, stick to products that make sense to you, that have a good use case, and just diversify yourself.
Okay. Now, I guess I'm curious, because they are crypto assets, and as you diversify into more of these altcoins, I've heard traders say that the only reason they trade altcoins is so they can acquire more Bitcoin or more Ethereum. So what's your take on that?
Well, I know that a lot of people have been, in the last 6 months before, we had this pullback here, we are claiming like, oh, look, we have another all-time high, but the all-time high is against the dollar. We really need to start thinking about the all-time high against Bitcoin, because we need to start measuring against Bitcoin, because that's really the metric now. Because once you're in crypto, that is the benchmark is Bitcoin. You're trying to beat Bitcoin if you're in something else. Otherwise, just buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So you need to measure against Bitcoin, because if you go back to the all-time highs from 4 years ago, like just go back to Litecoin, it was 50 Litecoins to a Bitcoin. Well, Litecoin hit $300, $400 and became an all-time high again, but Bitcoin's 50,000. So it's still 100 Litecoin or more to be equal to a Bitcoin. So while in dollar sense, it hit an all-time high, it's an all-time high against Bitcoin. So you need to recalibrate your mind to say, I'm trying to get as many sats or Bitcoin equivalents as possible, rather otherwise just buy Bitcoin. So, but if you're playing a poker game, you're playing the toughest player at the table, which is Bitcoin, which is one of the hardest ones to beat. But that's the game you're in when you're playing with altcoins.
Makes sense. I remember reading I stumbled across a Reddit thread from 3 years ago, and it was I hate Bitcoin was the title. And basically, the original poster was upset because they really researched all the cryptos, right? They understood the technology. They were enamored by all the technology of all the other coins and all that. And so they took their money out of Bitcoin and put it in all the altcoins. And, we know what happened, but if you don't know, what happened was Bitcoin went up by 2 times and the altcoins just went down.
Yeah. And it's really hard to predict when the altcoin season is really going to hit. But when the altcoin season hits, it hit pretty much for the most part, about a couple months after the peak of 2017, when Bitcoin hit 20,000, altcoins just took off like a rocket ship, and they were like 5 to 10x better than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If you're in the right altcoin, like the Theta has done incredible against Bitcoin, Zilliqa has done well against Bitcoin. There have been some altcoins that outpace Bitcoin, but it doesn't happen all the time. That's why diversification is key, and getting exposure to as much of the entire crypto space. Yeah. If you believe in the idea of crypto, then getting good exposure across the industry, but while minimizing your risk, is really how you want to do it. And that's why I go back to platforms a lot, and I just say pick 5 or 10 strong platforms, which gives you, for 10 coins, you get exposure to 1,000 different projects, and that covers 10 to 20% of the marketplace, but about 80 to 90% of the market cap. So you're basically in the whole thing.
It makes sense. So you can pretty much cover all the market cap, and so you can get all those gains and everything. Now, would you ever, I guess the last thing, and this is all stuff that you share and communicate with your members that join your AltcoinOpoly, right? And how can people get access to that again?
So if you go to litecoinleader.com, and that's how you find me, and that's the website, and you just join it. The entry level is $20 a month, so you get exposure to, I have a free YouTube at litecoinleader.io. You can see that I'm giving out about 2/3 of my coins are free, to everybody, just to get everybody exposed to understand what's going on. But there are some coins I keep for just subscribers. But by the end of July, you're going to have all the pieces available to put together your AltcoinOpoly board. And then in August, you'll be able to fill out your entire board and write down all the spaces and all your coins in different spaces and send it in. And we'll pick a winner that gets a free trip to Myrtle Beach. We have dinner together. We're probably going to do a meetup.
Oh, nice.
So it's a pretty nice prize for about $20 a month. It's still, anybody that joins between now and the end of July is eligible.
Okay.
You watch the 30-ish videos, figure out where all the coins go, write it on a piece of paper, and take a picture of it, mail it in however you like. But that gives everybody, I think that brings everybody up to a certain level of understanding of altcoins, and just say, here's a typical portfolio of altcoins and then what I would do. And it gives you those platforms, gives you some DeFi, gives you some top tier, gives you some cheaper coins, and a good mix of the entire market space, and say, here's a typical portfolio, and here's something, how to keep track and how to kind of manage your 30-ish coins.
That's awesome. That's awesome, because I mean, as I'm seeing right now, and if you're watching this, like, you know a ton about altcoins, and it takes a lot of time in the market, time researching, exposure, arrows in your back, gains and losses, to get that knowledge to be able to pick out which ones are good and bad. And, you can either do that yourself, or you can get your help. Like someone like you who's been there, done that, and has this like great training program for people. I think that's pretty awesome.
Exactly. Now I'm just it's the old classic, time is money. Right? Rather than you spending the time, I've already put in the time. I already have the knowledge. I have 5 years of experience. I know all these different projects, and picking out the top 20 or 30 coins is not easy for someone brand new.
Yeah.
But I'll make the videos for you. I'll tell you what my opinion is, not financial advice, but here's 30-ish coins I like, and here's why. And here's all the research for you. And I even give you even more information to say, if you want to dig further, here's more videos to go look at. But if you just want to take the video at 20-ish minutes at face value, and here's a coin for the board, there you go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So litecoinleader.com. That'll be in the description below. So that's real cool. I'm gonna have to go and study that a lot more, because if I would have known what some of the things that you knew back in January, that'd be real nice.
Yeah, I like to say I'm the guy I wish I knew when I started, and that's the way I position myself. If I was going to start out now, I try to remember what I was like when I was beginning. I didn't know who to turn to. I was watching on YouTube. I was trying to figure it out all for myself. Wallets, exchanges, coins, all these different things. I'm trying to help people get educated on this as quickly as possible and jumpstart them as they get involved in the space.
Yeah, because there's so much technical barriers, like all this jargon, lingo. Like, you've thrown out a bunch that you probably don't even realize that when you're starting, you're like, what's a DeFi, right? It's decentralized finance. But even then, what is decentralized finance? And that can be another conversation for another day, because that could be a whole conversation in itself.
Absolutely. And I always look to my subscribers. It's a dynamic. I'm an open book. I have my phone number at the top of my website. You can email me anytime you want. I'm on Telegram at Litecoin Leader. Like, whatever, tell me what you want as far as a video, and I'll make it. And people were wondering, how do I get Theta? How do I get ZIL? How do I stake ZIL? How do I do security? And those have led to many videos that I make. So some of my best videos and most popular ones are suggestions from subscribers.
Which is exactly what your market wants. That's a great, it's a market to message match. So
exactly.
That's important. It's rather than trying to create a product for the market, you ask the market what they want and then give them what they want. And that's a better solution. So now I want to move into this past dip. The market went from, all-time highs, euphoria, to now, if you look at the fear and greed index, everyone's freaked out. People that got in the past few months, most of them, if they hodled, they're experiencing losses. What's your take on what's happened? What's contributed to that? I'd love to get your insight there.
Well, every market has a pullback, and in a healthy market, if you go back to the 2016, 2017 run up, where Litecoin went from 1,000 to 20,000 in the space of a year.
Yeah.
Or even going back to last March, when it went from 3,000 up to 60,000, you have healthy pullbacks in that space. It's not a straight line all the way up.
Yeah.
So it goes up, and then in a healthy market, you have a 40 to 50% pullback, because it's just people selling out, just balancing out the portfolios, and just everything takes a breather, and then it goes up again. So sometimes you buy in and it's at a peak, and there's no predicting it. We could have run straight up to 100. We did 100,000, and we didn't. But we went up to 60,000, then we pulled back into the 30s. Obviously, there was a lot of FUD. There's a lot of different stories. Elon Musk was tweeting a lot and pulling the market back. There's going to be stories out there all the time, because there are whales and there are market manipulators. But for the most part, in a healthy market, going up to 60 and pulling back to 30, it's healthy, because when it runs up and it goes up 50,000 and it pulls back 25, that's healthy, because it balances it out, gives everybody a breather, gives us a nice starting space again. And now we're probably going to go from 30. I wouldn't be surprised if we go from the 30s up to the 70s, then back down to the 50s, and then start to run up to 100. Because That's just the way it zigzags up. But if you go
Yeah.
back in time, for the last 12 years of the existence of Bitcoin, there has never been a stretch for more than 4 years. There's never been a period of more than 4 years where anyone has ever lost money. So no matter when you bought, you could have bought at the peak of 20,000 back in 2017. You'd still be up now because it's over 30,000.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works. So you don't time it right, but what you can do is you can buy some each month and do what they call dollar cost averaging. I know everybody wants I want to be in, and they just throw all their money in, but sometimes it's not the best answer.
Yeah, especially when you don't know what direction the market's going to go. There's uncertainty there. I tell when I make videos, I say, yeah, dollar cost averaging is really good, especially if you're uncertain. If you got $1,000 and you're trying to get exposure to crypto, you don't have to spend it all today because, yesterday Bitcoin was at 34,000. That was a great deal. But then today it went down to 31 and it's even an even better deal. So
Right.
You never know. But then I also tell people not to lose too much sleep over those small fluctuations. If, like you said, if Bitcoin's going to 100,000, which I've heard, for example, Kevin O'Leary I think he held a panel at the Bitcoin conference. And basically he's like, I'm in the institutional investor space and they have $1 trillion. They want to put it into Bitcoin, but we got to cover this hurdle of the Bitcoin energy problem, right? Is it a problem there, right? Is it too dirty? Is it dirty money? And it's more of a political problem, not really an actual problem. Because when you look into it, and perhaps you can speak on that, but when you look into it, it's actually doing some really cool things for the world of energy.
Yeah, it's a perceived risk. There's a perception issue. So I like to talk about there's actual risk versus perceived risk. Bitcoin is actually perceived to be risky, but what's really risky now is holding your money in U.S. dollars when they're printing more and more. There's more dollars that exist now. They printed twice as many dollars that have ever existed. There was 50% less money a year ago. So that just gives you an idea. That's part of the rush into the market where I want to get rid of the dollar and get into something that's probably going to be holding its value and appreciating versus this dollar, which is continuing to lose its value. But as far as the energy thing, that's more FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's out there. There's more energy spent on playing video games than in mining Bitcoin. And typically, when companies set up Bitcoin miners, they seek out areas where the energy is cheap because they know that's one of their costs. So they'll go where there's low cost of energy or there's excess energy that people are just they can't move it out of a certain area. So they're giving it almost away for free. So it's a perfect use case for you can drop Bitcoin miners anywhere on the planet and they'll run. So if you find a spot on the planet where the energy is cheap and the environment is suitable for being a Bitcoin miner, that's often where they go.
Yeah. And they're also, because it's a cost factor for their businesses always like to reduce their costs. So I always say they're always looking to lower that cost. So how can you lower that cost? Well, if you get more efficient energy, and renewable energy is some of the cheapest energy out there. And so if you have money invested in reducing the cost of renewable energy and making it more efficient, more viable, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, if you have a product where part of your cost is the energy, that as a product owner or as a company, you're going to seek out the cheapest and most efficient energy sources, which is what Bitcoin miners do. So if there's any company or industry that's seeking out greener or better use cases of their energy, it's Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, which I think is a powerful message. And I think it's good. This is one of those industries I tell everyone, it's I can't tell you to put your money in it, although I'd like to, right? I'm not a financial advisor, and it's, your money, you can do with it what you want. But the one thing I wish I would have done earlier, because I had heard about it. And, when I was in college, so when I graduated in 2013. So I heard about it then. And, I started working for a consulting firm and got a nice signing bonus. And if only I would have known, if only I would have taken the time to actually learn about it, right? Because it was no one in my circle was doing anything with it or talking about it. It's just you just hear these kind of rumors or headlines, these little like quips here and there, but I never took the time out of my day to go and research it myself. And had I done that before, things would be different. So I always tell people that's one of my biggest regrets when it comes to this industry over the past 10 years is I never took the time to actually learn about it, despite seeing it around me. I think that's a similar story for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the first videos I made on my YouTube channel. And I tried to incorporate about 10 or 20% of my videos. Amazing, I've got that many videos. I can say only 10% of that. But I try to talk about psychology and the mental aspect. But there is one about regret. Everybody has regrets, and you can't you can't fault yourself for what you did or didn't do, because it was difficult to get into Bitcoin in 2013. It really was. It wasn't easy to get into it back then. Some people did, and they made out like bandits, and often they're Bitcoin maximalists because they get a lot of Bitcoin. But you can't have regret. You like everybody second guesses, and you have 20/20 hindsight. I should have held on to a coin longer. I should have bought this coin back when. I should have sold at the peak. You can't second guess yourself. You've got to just know that you're going to do the best you can on any given day. Just know that this is an asset class that's appreciating. Get into it. Again, telling myself, like 2021 self talking my 2016 self, just get in. Don't worry about what mistakes you're going to make. You will make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, but just get into the marketplace, do the best you can, take a profit, and just keep plugging forward. Don't worry about what the other guy before you has done, because there's always going to be someone that has beaten you to the punch before that. So when I started, I thought like, oh, I'm never going to catch up to these first guys we started in 2012, 2013. But now people are looking at me and say, I'm never going to catch up to Litecoin Leader. He's been in this for 5 years. It doesn't matter. We're still very early. Less than 2%, maybe 3 to 5% of the entire world is in cryptocurrency. That is still early adopter phase.
Well, and even if you look at the top, I mean, that is all great that you said there. I think that's good life advice. Not only crypto advice, but it's good advice to take to heart. You can only do your best, and don't have regrets on your past decisions. You can only learn from them and move forward. But I think, like you said, it's really early, and so the future is very uncertain. Because if you look at even all the top coins, right, including Bitcoin, they still are growing. Right, there's still a lot to them, and so that makes the future exciting. But it's also like, because it's very unknown how these new technologies are going to influence the current systems that we have in place, which I think makes this industry one of the most fascinating industries out there. And, like back to the Kevin O'Leary, he says $1 trillion is going to come into Bitcoin. It's just waiting there. So there's money waiting to go into this industry. So I know I'm telling myself, as the price, if it goes down and you hear all this FUD and you're like, oh my gosh, did I make a mistake? Did I, is this going to just end, right? Am I going to be that person that, 5 years from now, he's like, oh, you got by crypto? I don't want to be that person. No one wants to be that person. But then you start listening to like the real stuff that $1 trillion wants to come into this space. We have countries that are adopting it. It's going to grow. And so I just want to end with, how do you think the future is going to play out? Just a prediction.
Well, I try to focus on what I know as facts. And the facts are that blockchain is truth. Blockchain is going to enter into a lot of marketplaces. Bitcoin was the first killer app on blockchain. So blockchain is going to continue to penetrate many different markets. The DeFi sector is going to go up, the decentralized finance, because finance is such a big area of industry. Bitcoin is basically competing with gold. So it could be winding up being 10 trillion or more, whereas Bitcoin is only about a trillion and a half right now. So it could easily go up 5 to 10x, but the rest of the sector could go up 50 to 100x, just because there's so many other things that blockchain can get involved with. That's why all these different use cases that exist. So there's so many different things where blockchain and crypto can go, and so many areas where this can go with all the finance, all the different areas of financial aspects in the world. It's just going to be an amazing growth period. But I don't think people can quite fathom how big this is going to get, because they don't. It's hard for them to wrap their minds around how big the financial industry is globally, as more and more people that don't even have bank accounts get banked. As more people get into the financial sector and start to remove themselves from the existing legacy to the new regime. So crypto could go up 100x from here in the next 5 to 10 years, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
And that's wild. That would be, we'd love that.
That's why it doesn't matter what the price is today.
Yeah.
If things are going to go up 100x. If you bought in for 30 or 60, but it winds up being 6 million versus 3 million, what does it really matter today?
Yeah. And you don't want to get too greedy. And I think you mentioned a couple of things is just that there's opportunity beyond just investing in the coins, right? Learning blockchain, learning how it flows, seeing because you said this earlier, seeing the problems that need to be solved and creating solutions around that. And that's one of the things I try to talk to people about is, you don't have to just trade coins to be a part of this industry. You can create a business around it. There's so many avenues and so many things that you can do. You just got to get creative and pay attention.
Yeah, DeFi didn't exist 3 years ago, and now look where it is now. So there's going to be a different thing. NFTs didn't exist 2 years ago. Now look where that's heading. So non-fungible tokens, and that we didn't even talk about that. That's an entirely separate project, but that could easily replace intellectual property or real estate deeds very easily going forward. And just imagine all the middlemen that could be cut out going forward.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure talking with you. You have a ton of knowledge. I appreciate you sharing it all. I'm gonna have to have you on again, and we can dive into some of those specific topics like we mentioned. Just before we go, can you remind everyone again where to get access to your resources, where to find you at?
Sure. Litecoinleader.com is the easy way to find me. That's my main website. Litecoinleader.io is my YouTube channel. And on Telegram, it's Litecoin Leader. So it's pretty straightforward. If you remember Litecoin Leader, you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to stop this recording.
So I hope you enjoyed the interview. I thought it was really good what Dylan led the discussion, and I think the answers I provided and that Dylan provided and the banter back and forth was really valuable. Hopefully you felt the same way. And obviously we'd like it if you share, like, and subscribe to both of our channels. And again, further the community, further the adoption, and just help to inform other people. I think it was a good discussion, and I'm looking forward to doing it with him again. And certainly I'll be doing it with more interviews, as many as I can reach out to in the community. I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had. I think there's a lot of discussion that I could offer. And I always like furthering the point. Like, either I have a good answer or people have a good counterpoint, which makes me more educated and furthers the entire community. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. I'm looking forward to doing more of them in the future. Again, like and subscribe, share the video. We really appreciate that. And I'll see you next time.